your lawyer, was the lawyer for your friend, Mr. Kendrick, here in court with you on December 28th, 2022? You can answer first, and I will let you explain, but I need you to answer yes or no.
But could you stop yelling at me like I'm your child or something? I'm not your child.
You are not.
You talking aggressive to me. You don't intimidate me, all them guys over here. So if you would have came to me and asked me that, I'd have told you the same thing. What if they was in my face or not in my face? I'm not scared of them or you.
I don't want you to be.
Well, that's what you acting like it. That's what you acting like you're trying to pay.
So do you want me to bring my voice down? And I apologize
don't
if it sounds like
I ain't your child. Could I take a break? Y'all in the car.
No, we've had so many breaks this morning. We really need to get through this.
What you just heard is one of the most extraordinary bits of courtroom drama that you will ever see on live TV or on Law and Order, the Lincoln Lawyer. We're not even going to start talking about Matlock. That was the testimony and a comment from a YSL key witness for the prosecution earlier this week. Welcome to this podcast from Atlanta News First, where we are continuing to cover the remarkable developments from Atlanta's trial of the 21st century. I'm Tim Darnell, joined by Brittany Ford. We're obviously talking about the trial of Jeffrey Williams, more popularly known as the international rap musical entertainment superstar known as Young Thug. And Brittany, this bit of sound that we began this podcast with happened earlier this week when Antonio Sledge was under a very intense bit of redirect cross-examination from Fulton County Assistant Chief District Attorney Adrianne Love. She was raising her voice, had been raising her voice repeatedly at the witness, talking about a particular shooting that happened several years ago, and eventually Antonio Sledge was almost just seemingly just physically just beaten down by the relentless questioning. His shoulders were hunched, his head was in his hands. Tell us your perspective on how all this came about.
Well, yeah, he was just really mentally exhausted from the whole situation. I know we've seen it over the course of time, the prosecution's witnesses, these witnesses have just been beaten down by the questioning, to say the least, but also in, the aspect of, a lot of them are just, not in the mental capacity. A lot of them have said that they took these plea deals just to, basically take time off to before this trial came. How can I just stay out of jail? We heard that from Little Woody too, where he said, I told you whatever you wanted to hear so that I could get out of jail that day. We've heard the same thing from Sledge on the stand. Now he's saying that he signed this plea deal. He's indicted in this case. He's a part of this indictment of this case. He's saying that he signed this plea deal to basically in his best interest. So on the stand, I mean, again, he has been just like Little Woody. We've seen literally a parallel of that. I don't recall and I don't recall over and over again. And tensions in the courtroom really have just built through those, frustrations of not getting those answers. And that clip that we listened to was the bombshell. I mean, that was explosive. And Adrianne Love was going at him. I mean, this is about that plea deal. Sledge has also said in his testimony that, he thought that a part of his plea deal was they were going to remove some of those items, that some of those items in that plea deal that they didn't agree to is what he on the stand said, hey, this is not what I agreed to. And that kind of, again, has caused tensions. But there was even one moment where he was like, my head hurts. I'm going to have to go and get some mental therapy after being on this court stand. But really saying, don't talk to me like I'm your child. That whole explosive moment really set the tone of just showing how frustrated the witnesses are, how frustrated, this prosecution is, and literally just another indicator of how slow moving this trial is. I mean, they basically didn't get much out of him. He was dismissed earlier this week, we heard, but I mean, something like that, as he said, mad luck. You brought it back in the day with that one. That's a back in the day one, but yeah, that we haven't seen anything like that in the courtroom. Obviously, Little Woody was very, entertaining with his rhetoric with the prosecution, but that was something we have not seen before.
Well, also something that is very, very rare. You and I were talking about this before we started recording. Antonio Sledge's attorney, Derek Wright, spent the entire day, one entire day, on the witness stand in front of the jury being cross-examined or examined by Adrianne Love in regards to conversations as far as what he thought Antonio Sledge was thinking he was agreeing to. Take us through that.
Right. And that's actually very unique, just from sources in the courtroom that I've talked to and being in the courtroom, to have an actual attorney of someone that's indicted in this case on the stand is something you don't see every day. And this actually just shows the desperation of the prosecution to try to make some sort of point in calling this witness. This was their witness. This witness took this plea deal to, you know, quote unquote, help the prosecution in this case to get off on some of those charges. And the fact that they actually have Antonio Sledge's attorney, Derek Wright, on the stand right now is really an indicator of how desperate this prosecution is to get something, of substance to come across to this jury who, oh my gosh, if I was a juror right now, I'd be so confused. I mean, it's just left and right and up and down. You don't really know where the case is going at certain times. I know I reported in one of our segments that, jurors were falling asleep. So I think, with Wright being on the stand is just another indicator of how desperate, again, this prosecution is to come across with the point. And you mentioned it. That's why they've actually, with their probing of Derek Wright, have tried to prove that they agreed on this plea deal and that Sledge knew everything that he signed in this plea deal when they had that meeting in December 28th of 2022 is what this date they keep on referring to. That's the date that Sledge actually signed this plea deal and agreed to these terms. And now we're hearing him on the stand saying, number 7, number 8, I didn't agree to. I didn't know what I was agreeing to. You didn't, change or modify this plea agreement. I feel like I've been deceived. And so now, again, they have gone to the extreme. And I think this was an impromptu call to the stand, to be completely honest with you. In the middle of court, just shortly after, I want to say, we heard those explosive moments, we saw Wright kind of go up to the stand and have, a meeting with the judge and just said, I've been now called to be a witness. So I think that was surprising for him, too. I don't think he was expecting this. And again, something we don't see every day, somebody indicted in a case taking the stand to testify when they actually have a client that they're representing in this case.
The other very unexpected development, obviously could not have been foreseen, was the death of Rich Homie Quan.
Right.
He is an Atlanta rapper. He is dead at the age of 33. No cause of death has yet been released by the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office, which is conducting the autopsy. But he was kind of an indirect central figure of the trial because going back to a 2015 or 2018, I want to say, barbershop shooting in which Kenneth Copeland has admitted, a.k.a. Little Woody, did admit taking part of a shooting that injured Corey Lamar, Rich Homie Quan's father.
Right.
Take us through the ramifications of this.
Yeah, that's been a big, intricate, part of this case. At one point, Rich Homie Quan was on the list to testify. The prosecution took him off, and there was speculation that they thought his loyalty to Young Thug was strong enough that they wouldn't be able to actually, prosecute the case with him on the stand. But, with him dying, and I don't know if you heard this, there's kind of conspiracy theories going around. But the moment, of course, that Little Woody statement went viral, and he actually, which was funny, which is so out of line in the courtroom, said something directly to Young Thug, asking, like, what's your beef? Do you have a bad relationship? And there's a viral moment I'm sure everybody has seen where, Young Thug is seen laughing in the courtroom, like, really? But shortly after he made those statements, the next day, Rich Homie Quan came out and called Little Woody a liar for those statements. That was viral. That had gone viral. And then literally 2 to 3 days later, if my timeline is not correct, forgive me, he died. Which, a lot of conspiracy theories were going around where, did his death, kind of happen because of what he said and called Little Woody a liar? Now, there's no evidence that points to that at all. But of course, the internet was kind of going crazy that, you know, we've had this star moment. We know Rich Homie Quan has been, you know, mentioned in the trial, and there's been, you know, again, of course, to that barbershop shooting involving his dad. And now we had little Woody have a viral comment about, you know, Young Thug and Rich Homie Quan's relationship on the stand. And then he responds in a viral video calling little Woody a liar. And then out of just happenstance, you know, this Atlanta rapper that, again, Rich Homie Quan is fabricated in Atlanta rap scene. He has so many hits. Everybody knows him here. He's a well-known name in the rap industry. His tragic death happens days later. I mean, that was explosive. And, you know, we were thinking, how is this? And we talked about this. How is this going to affect this trial? You know, how is this going to affect the pulse of what's happening in the courtroom? And I will say there has been short mentions of Rich Homie Quan since his death, but again, nothing really tied to how this whole trial is playing out. But a very, very crazy sequence of events that, you know, that happened.
It is the trial of the 21st century here in Atlanta that's being watched and followed all over the world, and we here at Atlanta News First are on top of it, bringing you all of the latest details, developments in the most fascinating courtroom drama that you will ever see. It offers a behind-the-scenes look, a true, real-life, behind-the-scenes look at how the American judicial system really works and how the various moving parts play out. Brittany Ford, final thoughts. What are you looking for in the coming days and weeks?
You know, you can't even have anything to look forward to in this case. It's so crazy. You know, you think you go in one day with testimony and then you have, you know, an explosive day like what we saw with Sledge. I mean, there's so many twists and turns. It's something that you really do in a trial that you really have to follow day in and day out. You think one testimony or one, you know, witness will be bland with, you know, with their comments or reluctant, as we've seen with several of their witnesses, but it's something that you got to stay tuned in. I mean, I wish I had a forecast of what tomorrow would be like, but every day you walk in the courtroom with this case, it's like, what is going to happen? So we'll see. We know Wright is going to continue to be on the stand as far as we know for the rest of the week. We now, with the different changes we've had with this new judge, that's a big thing for reporters and people in the courtroom. We were able to get a witness list that told us who's next to be on the stand. Wright was a surprise. Again, we don't have that. Glanville and his court reporter were very, you know, more open with their witnesses list, but we don't even know who's going to be on the stand next. So that's also just another twist and turn and surprise value that we get every day in this trial that will continue to follow.
We will continue to follow, and you can as well. We are streaming every day, the daily YSL feed on our Atlanta News First app and at atlantanewsfirst.com. We are carrying live every day of the historic trial of entertainment superstar Young Thug here in Atlanta. This has been an Atlanta News First podcast. You can listen and watch all of our podcasts, watch them on YouTube and all of our streaming apps, and listen to all of Atlanta News First podcast on the Young Thug trial, Behind the Investigation, Sports Tonight, Decatur Dish, and Behind the Investigation, wherever you listen to your podcast, on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, or your favorite podcasting platform. And stay with Atlanta News First for all of the latest developments in the trial of Young Thug here in Atlanta.